Draw whenever. Player 1 drew a royal card, and it's an ace, therefore I have to burn 4 cards. My last card was a royal, therefore player 1 must burn. Player 1 drew a royal, therefore I must burn 3 royals. Or 3 cards, I mean. In that burn pile, I did have a queen, therefore player 2 cannot, or player 1. In that pile, I did not have, in that pile, I did have a royal, therefore player 1 cannot take the pile. Player 1 just drew a royal, therefore I must burn. I was unable to draw a royal, therefore player 1 can take the pile. So I drew a royal card, therefore player 1 has to burn 2 cards. Player 1 sent over an ace, therefore I must burn 4 cards. I was unable to draw a royal, therefore I lost the deck. Player 1 has it now. Player 1 just drew a jack, therefore I must burn. I just drew an ace, therefore player 1 must burn 4 cards. Player 1 sent over a queen, therefore I must burn 2 cards. Double twos, therefore I can slap. And then click the pile and disappears. Now I can draw.
Okay, so first we have the startup function. It sets the default to player 1 and then player 2. And then we have the things speak different channels. We've got the channel ID, the write key, the read key. It sets all the buttons to off before the gameplay. Then we have the read delay, the write delay, and it clears the things speak channel before each game. And then we have the choose player button where you can switch your player number from 1 to 2 and vice versa. And then we have the start button function. It switches the player numbers to off so that you can't switch it in the middle of the game. It turns off the start button because the game's already started, turns on the slot button, and then we have the shuffle function where it takes the deck of 52 cards and it turns it into a string, shuffles the values, and then sends the deck to player 2. Okay, and then we have the read shuffle function, and it sends it through a while loop, waiting for the other player to send their deck, and then when it monitors that you receive the deck, it switches it to 1, which terminates the while loop. And then after the while loop's been terminated, it switches it back into an array so that it can be used for the game. And then we have the shuffle function. It cuts the deck in half. The first half goes to player 1, second half goes to player 2, and it assigns you 2 arrays, 1 for the deck value and 1 for your deck image. Okay, and then for our reach component, I did the sounds. So we have a shuffle sound, a slap sound, and background music. For the sounds, we basically used audio read to turn the file into an array, and then we used the sound function to read the array and play the sound.
So in the project, I'm in charge of doing images. And first, there's a background image and I did. And we also have a card back image here, you can see. And also I do the deck image here. So first, the deck image, there are 52 cards. 52 cards images, I put them in an array, and then I assign each image with a deck value, and their corresponding, the one image correspond to one value, and then I'll do the rules. First, there's a rules button, and I add to the rules here like this, and then we also have a pop-up image for slap. Here we have a slap extra function. The first part is the song, and then I do the image part. So first, when you click the slap button, and it will have a pop-up image with a hand and the slap image, and then it will close. So like here, if you slap button pushed, if you push the slap button, and we we will have a pop image to remind you have slapped a card, and the game will be continue.
This is our check if slap function. This basically checks if so it basically writes the rules for what a slap is or not isn't. And a slap is when it's a back-to-back cards, like a double sevens, or like if it's a 7-4-7, that's a sandwich. That's also like considered a slap. And the code basically says that is true, and it sends that data over to another function. And if it's not, it just says it's false and also sends that data to another function. There you go. Okay, so we have our check confirmed from other player, and it checks if the slap was true. And if it was true, it sends it down to the check slap button. And if it was 0, if it was false, it checks the checker sets equal to 0 and then sends it down to the slap button push. We come down to our slap button push, and first thing it does is it just checks if the other player has not already slapped and taken the pile. And if it hasn't, then it just runs through the check of slap. And if it's true, then it allows the player to take the pile. And if it's not, the game just turns off all the buttons and the game keeps on going. Like each player can go ahead and draw.
Our first function here is the wait for other player function. It waits for the other player to send their data, and once the player has received that data, it sets the the value new pile value equal to that card that the other player has sent, and then sends player who sent message equal to the other player's number. That turns off the while loop and runs down to this if statement right here. And if the value, new pile value, does not equal 0, the card is added to the center pile image and value. Our next function is the Jawcard function. It essentially takes your first array, the first element of the my deck image, and that is equal to your first card. It then adds that to the center pile value and the center pile image, and then deletes those two values that originally in your deck. Once the Jawcard function has been called, it will call send data to other player. This takes the first card, which you already declared in Jawcard, and sends that as well as your player number to the other waiting player. Royal Checker checks to make sure that the card that you just played is a royal, meaning it is a jack, queen, king, or ace. It then calls up to draw or burn, and as long as your royal checker does not equal 1, 2, 3, or 4, and it is equal to 0, then it allows you to draw again and set your slap function on. If this is not true, you have to turn on your burn button, turn off your draw button, and turn off your slap button. In the case that you do draw a royal card, you are sent to wait for royal. Wait for royal makes you wait X amount of times, X being the face value of your card, until the other player has finished drawing their cards. Once the draw button is pushed, it checks to make sure your deck value actually has cards in it. If there are cards, you draw a card, you send the data to the other player, and your draw button is turned off, and then make sure that your last card you just drew is not a royal. If it is a royal, you are sent to wait for royal, and then draw or burn is executed after that. If your card is not a royal, you are sent to wait for other player, and then from there you either draw or burn. If your deck does not have any cards in it, it is sent to this else statement. We will talk about that later. The burn button push function is a for loop that makes you draw and send your card X amount of times, X being the required amount from a face card.
All right, and for our special rule that we came up to make the game unique, we came up with the wait for other player endgame, which is the same as the other wait for other player that I've seen above, but this time it results in a different ending, which is the end game showdown that we like to call it for our function. And we come down here, and this is our end game showdown, and the MATLAB pretty much grabs the player who got most of the deck, the one that didn't end up with 0 cards pretty much, and they run through the entire deck, and each player has a chance to slap for like a double or a sandwich, and if they slap correctly, they win the game, and if they don't, the game continues.
Okay, so here player 1 has 0 cards left, and player 2 has all the cards. Push draw, send a 2 over. Now player 1 can draw, and a message will come up. And Game Showdown, push OK. And now the cards will count down, and if you get a slap, then you win. Says player 2 has won the game. And that is the end of our game.